March 26, 2020. Okay, so went to the college there, San Bernardino Valley College in San Bernardino, and then went on and pursued the course in respiratory therapy to become certified, and all that went pretty well. And so, yeah, I go ahead and apply for a job at San Bernardino County Hospital. And I can't remember what went wrong with my morning. So I'm showing up my first day at work late, right? So I walk into the department and I see a door that says Chief Honcho on it, Director of Respiratory Therapy. So I go and knock on the door and he says, "Yeah, come on in." I said, "Hi, I'm Mike. I know who you are. You're late." I said, "Yeah, I had that. I don't want to hear what your problem was, okay?" He says, "Now, here's how it's going to go today because you showed up late. I mean, everyone else already been assigned to a therapist to follow and catch on to how we do things around here." Says, "What you're going to have to do is because you're late, you're stuck with me. My name is Speedy." I looked on the counter there. It actually had his real name, but he says, I go by Speedy. Now, what you're going to do here today is sit here in that chair and watch me do paperwork. I got payroll to do and all kinds of stuff. So have a seat and don't ask any questions." Sir, I have a seat and I'm going, "Oh my God, this is going to be a long, horrid, boring day here with Speedy." I mean, 5 minutes hadn't gone by. He gets a call on the phone. He says, "Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll be right there." I don't know who he meant, we. So he said, no, he says, "You coming?" He says, "You're with me. Where I go, you go." Okay. Says, "We're going to the cath lab. There's a heart catheterization going to happen. And I will be there to sample arterial blood. The radiometer will be there." The radiometer, that was a brand name of a machine that basically at that time is the thing that was really before the blood gas machines came about, where we'd take a blood sample and it would give us a whole host of information from a single sample. This was dedicated just to providing you what the oxygenation level was in a fresh blood sample from a patient. So they already had an arterial line in either the brachial or radial artery, and about every 10 minutes while they're doing this heart cath, Speedy would pull a cc and a half or so out. It goes into this little clear see-through kind of glass cup, and that would be put into a little slot in this machine, and a beam of light would be shined through it while this little stirring stick was going around in it to keep it from coagulating. And then in a short period of time, it would read out, 98, 95, 90, whatever percent the hemoglobin is saturated. And it's basically this. We know that most people know that if you're bleeding from an artery, the blood's going to be bright red. If you're bleeding from a vein, it's going to be dark because it's lost its oxygen. As blood is oxygenated, it becomes a brighter red. And so this was working on a very basic principle. I'm going to shine a beam of light that detects how bright red is this. And then he would read that off to the doctor just to give him update that your patient is well oxygenated or not, what needs to be adjusted to fix that. So this gentleman has just got an oxygen cannula on. He's not in any kind of distress. They're doing the heart cath to check to see if the heart's okay, because this gentleman, I think, was in a car accident, took a blunt blow to the chest. They want to make sure that heart and lungs and everything is, there's no damage. And so there's, they shoot a radioactive dye, goes through the heart, and they can visualize, the heart pumping and how well it's circulating. And it was either with that or through X-ray, they were able to determine that he had a cardiac tamponade. What a cardiac tamponade is, let me turn that off, is around the heart is the pericardium. It's a lining, a very thin lining that surrounds the heart. It's kind of like the little sac that holds it in there and holds. And despite the fact that the heart is going through all kinds of gyrations with just a normal rhythm, that sac is there, held tightly against the heart, serving its purpose. And so when this gentleman got into an auto accident, the possibly a rib or just from the blunt blow, the heart was damaged and blood was leaking from the heart chamber into the pericardium. And every as that leak continues, the pericardium is filling up with blood and compressing the heart. So pretty soon, yeah, there's alarms going off. The heart rhythm is failing. The gentleman is getting totally freaked out. He says, I don't feel good. I think I'm dying. I think I'm dying. And Speedy's at the head of the bed, and he's putting in a endotracheal tube. Requires like this horrific blade you put down into the mouth, and you jack the jaw way up, and you can visualize where the vocal cords is in the trachea, and you put a tube the size of your thumb in diameter down into that inflated tube to seal it off so that he could do the compressions. And the gentleman was now pretty much unconscious. And the doctors, they had decided even before the intubation said, we're going to open the chest, get some ventilation going. And so we're standing on the left side of this gentleman who's laying on his back, and I'm not freaking out, but I'm just really amazed at what I'm seeing on my first experience in the hospital. And they take a scalpel, and I mean, in between on his left side, two ribs, they just cut him open. And then they've got these jaw things that cracks it open even more. And hey, look at there. There's a human lung right there. I'm looking at it, and they get in there a little bit deeper, and they're going to examine the heart. And the minute they got near it, that pericardium sac blew out, and the heart now is ejecting blood that was hitting the wall, hitting the doctors, and I had backed off. I'm going, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I'm watching a man die there on the table. And, once the heart blew out, there was nothing they could do. They just all put their hands down. They go, all right, we're calling it at, 10:55, patient blah, 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 deceased, cardiac rupture, whatever they, And so it was quite a experience for first day hospital greenhorn on the job. And, I think, I can't remember what happened the rest of the day. I think Speedy just sent me on home early. I wasn't going to go out to the floor. He wasn't going to sit there and punish me anymore. I think he's realized I probably saw more than I was ready for. And so I went home and, told my mother about it. And yeah, so that was an interesting start into respiratory therapy. The days after that, pretty much blasé, the normal job of respiratory therapist in that day was visiting patients and giving them IPPB treatments, intermittent positive pressure breathing. Not used as much now, 20 or 30 years later. But this was mainly to just dispense an aerosolized medication like a bronchodilator. This would be good for treating people with asthma and such. And there were other medication we might give to help break up mucus and different things that we could aerosolize and that they could inhale. And what the intermittent pressure breathing machines did was when they just a slightest little sip on the mouthpiece, the machine would actuate and it would deliver a kind of a forced air, not hard, but just kind of help make sure taking a good deep breath and getting that medicine down in there. At some point, as the years went on, they discovered, with tests and double study blinds, that just effective was just a simple aerosol. And you got the little nebulizer, you got the mouthpiece, the little T tube, and then just a short extension tube that would help collect the aerosolized before you inhaled, so that when you inhale, you're getting it both from the tube where it's collected, but also what's continuing to be. And so it'd be a deep breath, and you'd hold it for a little bit, let it out. And, pretty simple stuff. You just, go and see, maybe 10, 15 patients a day in the rounds, doing that kind of stuff. Setting up oxygen, pretty basic. Back then it was very concerned about humidification. Not so much these days. You won't see every flow meter delivering oxygen out of the hospital wall oxygen with a bottle of water to bubble the oxygen through. They eventually, again, probably with further studies, they found that not having that oxygen humidified, not a huge deal, because these people are breathing. Part of what they breathe in is the oxygen that might be in their nose, the little cannula that just mounts below and two little prongs that fit in. And maybe 80–90% of what they're breathing in is just the air. And it's humidified, natural humidification that air has even in a building. And so that kind of simplified things. But it used to be a thing of every 24 hours. Every 24 hours, we would go and we would change that water bottle out with a new water bottle. And at one point, they finally went to that they were just disposable, one-time use, and you would let them run until they the water started getting low, which would be quite a while. But before the disposables, I mean, there was a huge job in just each day washing all of this IPPB equipment, washing the humidification bottles, nasal cannulas. Those don't get reused. They'll stay on a patient for a few days and then they get disposed. And things change as time goes on. But yeah, I found out really, really quick that I think I'm going to enjoy this job. And there were some interesting things, just like my first experience, some interesting things that happens along the way. Some of it is just, kind of, wow, I'm surprised I just saw that happen, or wow, did that patient just really do that or say that? So yeah, I'll mention a few of the incidents early on at the county hospital. One was over on the H ward. It's kind of where they keep those that are not mentally sound, but still need, some type of medical treatment, maybe even a respiratory therapy treatment or something. And so, on my rounds, one of the visits will be over to the H ward, and there's, Mrs. Whatever. And I walk in, and she had messed her bed. That's not the bad part. It was kind of these little rabbit pellet turds. Not the medical terminology, but I'll call them turds. Just little turd balls. And she had collected these. And on the bed rail, this metal bed rail, she had placed them in a row. And whenever a nurse or a physical therapist, respiratory therapist, or doctor would come in, she'd turn and she'd flick one of those at me. So I got one flicked at me. I go, well, I could hear the nurses already cracking up out there, because they know what's going on. And I said, well, why are you letting her do that? And she says, it's not hurting anything. Well, I have to give her, this treatment, and I don't want to have turd balls flicked at me. So I can't remember how we worked it out, but that was odd. And another one on H ward. Uh, there would be long-term patients over there on ventilators, and some not on ventilator, but they might have a tracheostomy tube that they're just breathing to the air. Usually would have humidification on it, but some of the patients will take the humidification tube off just because it's they're wanting to move around or whatever, and not a huge deal. So I go over to H ward again to see a Mr. Whatever, and I was shocked at what I saw. It was not a pretty thing. That the poor man was laying there, and it looked like he just wasn't being well cared for as far as the respiratory therapy goes. He was so full of mucus, and here he is laying in the bed, and the ceiling is like 6 feet up, and when he coughs, the sputum coming out, and now it's coming up out of me just thinking about it. Excuse me. Would shoot out of that tube, hit the ceiling, and then some of it would, before it could fully drip down, it would just kind of form like a stalactite in a cavern. And so there were all these little mucus stalactites, and of course the sheet was all covered and all. And I bring the nurses in. I said, look, clean them up. I'll get them suctioned out. And, then I talked with the department head. He said, people aren't going down there just because it's gross, apparently, but, the reason it's gross is he's being neglected. And so, I'm probably got that worked out a little bit better. And gosh, one other odd incident. Go down to give this gentleman a breathing treatment, and I step up to the side, and I'll call him Mr. Jones, how you doing? And the next thing I know, I'm being grabbed in a very private place, and it's not my elbow. And I jump back and I go, hold on a minute. You're not going to get your breathing treatment if you're doing that. And he went for me again. I said, okay, I'm out of here. And I go back up to the department. I said, Mr. Jones, and they all just start cracking up. Oh, the grabber got you, huh? Oh my gosh, they didn't even warn me because they think it's funny. Okay, we'll get them back someday with something. And yeah, so lots of weird stuff in hospitals. And this is just a start in my career. So I'll have some more for you as time goes on. And when we finally make it to Houston, then the horror stories start. Horror, the horror, the horror.